I have a choice?
You always do. I offer it to you.
Let's just start the charade.
Start the charade that is our friendship.
Oh,
Let the
what
games
is up,
begin.
Internet?
Oh, fuck. I'm sorry.
You son of a bitch. You. Nah, it's okay.
Get us started.
What's up, Internet? It's your boys, Brando Castro with Mr. Christopher House. Back again.
Oh, my
with
God.
more.
What? Back
Oh my God.
again.
Back again.
All right, brothers, sisters, everybody. All right. I'm excited to try this again.
Yeah, no, this is the second take, but we're talking another episode of the Otaku Remix podcast, and we were talking about the new series from acclaimed anime studio Trigger. Probably your favorite.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Like, because only because Watanabe doesn't have his own studio.
Not yet.
He keeps working.
He has his own brain trust, but
I mean, he does.
Not
He
yet.
does now. I think. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, if Watanabe had his own studio, that'd be my favorite. But Trigger for right now is my mainline.
Nice little coda on
my
that.
mainline dealers for what is like the closest form to visual crack.
Yeah.
Which is their
The only
anime.
source of one of the few sources of original anime content, Studio Trigger, and their new anime series streaming now on Netflix, BNA, aka Brand New Animal. So we're gonna be talking about the series that has debuted maybe at this point in time, maybe like a week or two ago on Netflix.
More than that,
streaming with
yeah.
the full series. And just going to give some of our thoughts, sort of have a review discussion as we do. We've been wanting to talk about it together anyway. So let's just get right into it. Chris, we kind of batted a few ideas around, and we may or may not have attempted a recording of this subject matter before without having some slight, I don't want to lie and say technical issues. But
I mean, my brain going haywire was technical issues. Yeah, so we kind of did a rough draft in terms of like discussing our ideas and Trigger as a whole and stuff like that. But like to get to the fucking point, BNA 12 episodes, relatively short for a Trigger anime, and you can kind of tell it feels a little condensed in certain areas, and honestly feels a little cheap in certain regards. But they kind of play it off really well. That's one of Trigger's strong suits, because their art style is so, has a really nice pop value to it. Might be obnoxious to some, beautiful to others, but I'm in the others camp. And, they really keep up that energy of like positivity that we could all kind of use right now, while also, portraying characters that are really likable because of their oppressed status and fighting against the system and stuff like that. So
and their tails.
yeah. So I mean,
And their tails.
what's up?
And claws.
Oh, yeah, tails and claws.
fins.
I mean, that honestly, the beast aspect of the show kind of is fun, but it's not what drew me in. It really is just the overall positive themes. Honestly, if you don't know anything about this show yet, look up the ending credits for it. It's a song called Night Running. It's really, 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 really good. I'll even put it on the Twitter just to get that out there again. It's probably one of my favorite songs to come out this year, and it really establishes the tone of the show. And that's...
Yeah, I think the kids still call those good songs. They call it a banger.
God damn it. Give us your opinion, you old man.
Yes. But no, yeah. BNA, fantastic new series from Studio Trigger. I mean, we had a good time with it. A lot of different thoughts as far as the tone and take that they are going for. A little bit conflicted. So, I mean, let's just dive into some of the thoughts. So, just to preface really quickly, obviously, spoiler ahead for the entire series, short series. So, if you want to go give it a quick binge over on the Netflix, go ahead and do so now. If you don't mind, just stick along for the ride.
And watch the Japanese dub. English dub got fucked, apparently, in the audio.
Yeah, word on the street is the English dub is complete garbo. So not even just like dub over sub preference. Just
voice actors probably did their job just fine. It was just the audio engineering was not up to par.
Yeah, that's the word on the Reddits. So you have been warned. But yeah, moving forward, the series focuses on a young girl named Michiru Kagimori. She is a young teenage girl, and she is on the run when the series begins because she is a beast man. So the society that we live in the show, BNA, is like one where it exists of beastmen, these sort of anamorphic human beings that can transform between a human state and a sort of a beast man state, and just normal humans. And there is tension between them in society, so that there's a haven established, a paradise for beastmen called Anima City, where it's an all beastman city.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michiru is seeking refuge there as she is being pursued by human hunters. She is a unique character, so she's a Tanuki girl, which is adorable. But she also is she's a human that has transformed into a beastman, which is not a normal thing.
No, normally you are just born as a beastman, or you're born as a human. And in this case, she
very much one or the other.
She was a human and became a beastman.
So that's the
and in fact can't turn back. So no.
And so she finds her way into Beastman City, Anima City, excuse me, and she meets up with another. So she's a very spontaneous, upbeat character, and she meets with the no nonsense, always serious Shiro Ogami. He is a wolf beastman character who is more or less the de facto protector of the city, and he and her begin a friendship / semi-partnership.
Closer to a partnership, I would say. They're not super friendly with one another.
Yeah, and then they are the central relationship that kind of forms around the overall plot that kind of goes around the social issues that happen in Anima City, and then an overarching plot that is a little bit too big for its britches, as is Trigger fashion. So we'll get into that as we move forward, but generally, I think you kind of already established some of your thoughts in that little tasting that you kind of mentioned earlier. But what are your general thoughts of the series now that you've completed it? Just a synopsis.
So it's funny, when I ended the show, I was texting you like, "Oh, Trigger doing Trigger shit again." And to be fair,
what does that mean? What does that mean for people who haven't listened to our million other Trigger podcasts?
So, for those who don't know, Trigger, as an animation studio, often their plots often kind of follow a similar formula, where the first half
responsible for a few.
They're responsible for Kill la Kill, Darling and the Franxx. Many of the team, including the head writer and director, not the director of this show, but one of their main directors, did Gurren Lagann as well. So it's often kind of attributed to them in fashion.
Penny and Stocking, Kisniver.
Yes. Many of their shows follow the formula of the first half being the premise setup, which is like establishing characters, establishing the environment, and establishing the immediate threat. And then in the second half of the show, a newer, bigger threat is established that all of the characters must join together to fight against, and ultimately it like usually goes to space, or it becomes like a big like near conspiratorial level of like global domination sort of.
There's a large
that's
shift
usually
in the scale.
there's usually a huge shift in scale. Which actually, to be fair, BNA, its scale only jumps like 2 magnitudes as opposed to the usual like 7 that stuff like Promare and Gurren get into. But like to be honest, in Promare and Gurren, it feels, those shows feel appropriate for their jump in scale, whereas in this one, I don't want to say it's inappropriate, because the more I've thought about it, the more I feel like it might be trying to say something, but it nonetheless is a very big tonal shift. So if you get whiplash, go see your doctor. But regardless, I actually, my opinion has gone back and forth about the show, but ultimately I think show's not as dumb as I thought it was originally, and I don't know what the consensus is online, but I think it's trying to go for a social message that is very relevant to current events, even though it was written like almost a year ago at this point. And yeah, I think they still hit all the plot points right. I think Michiru is a fantastic protagonist. Ogami is a really good, what is the term? A really good
straight man?
No, not straight man, but like the the tangent to her character. It's on the tip of my tongue, and I'll get to it later. But more or less, he plays off her really well, because whereas they're both people trying to do good for Anima City, but Michiru is very much like she acts on the immediate problems. She's very much like if a child's in need, I'm going to save the child. I'm not going to, try to kill the kidnapper, sort of thing. Very Jedi mindset, if you would.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. Very look before you leap.
Yeah. She's not a look before she leaps. If anything, but she's much more concerned about helping others than she is about defeating the evil. Whereas,
I can see that,
whereas Ogami, I don't know if we want to talk about his backstory, but he has a really severe hatred for humans, but more so that stems from his anger towards the abuse that beastmen have suffered throughout his life, throughout his very long life. And so he vents this rage as like through his justice, if you would. Like, he is brutal in how he takes on opponents, because
definitely in the pilot they go hard,
like in every aspect, because he is overpowered as shit. Let's just get it right off the bat. He is near One Punch Man levels of like destroy everything and I'm immortal kind of shit.
Scaled to the other characters in the show, he's like untouchable. Like, he just goes out there with his bare fists. Doesn't even use his claws or fangs most of the time, and just he's beating down any beastmen and any quantity that oppose him with guns.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and so he goes, he puts the beat down on these beastmen who he feel are ruining Anima City. And to be fair, like, the people he's fighting are like terrorists and bombers and shit like that. Like, these are genuinely bad people, but he goes so far as to, I don't want to say emasculate, because that has a gender.
Nah, you're thinking about the thing with the deer. He like maims them.
Yes, that's a better term. Yeah, so he maims them, but he maims specific body parts. He maims the parts of them that kind of identify them more as beastmen than as humans.
And there's a point to that. I mean, I would say that. I mean, there's obviously a vicious brutality to that within context of that world, and he's very Batman in that regard, where he's just like, there is a little bit of a line that he toes as far as the volumetric violence and forceful brutality that he's like enforcing. But like within the pilot, just to kind of clarify the example, there are these terrorist beastmen that basically disrupt a very peaceful festival that's going on. I guess the anniversary of Anima City, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 10 year.
Yeah, and he's all salty about that because he's like he's touched by the fact that they were able to maintain Anima City for as long, but then like when they try to fucking kill people there, he goes into protector mode, and then he learns that the beastmen responsible are like paid off by humans to do the attack,
allegedly,
which just, so he's already like a discriminatory, like racist guy, Shiro, with cause from his trauma.
Right. He is not a irredeemable character. I'm just saying, like, this is his flaw.
No, and then so the reason he goes that far is because, like, when you say he takes away what identifies them as beastmen, he probably feels like they have lost the right to identify as beastmen when they sold out to humans.
Right, but in the same token, like, that his view is that that's justice, that he's taking away what they already gave up. But in another light, you can see it as he's making them into what he sees them as.
Yeah.
That's fair. Like, that's a distinct difference, because in one regard, you're making the world into the hell that you see it as. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he doesn't really understand what kind of role he's playing in all of this. And that's his kind of arc throughout the story, is that through seeing Michiru's actions and how she changes small corners of Anima City's society, whether it be through a ludicrous baseball episode, or as well as like small things like teaching children how to read and stuff like that. He starts seeing a different way to progress the city and to defend the city, if you would.
Yeah, I could see.
So
There's definitely.
so yeah, I mean, like, obviously, when violence is an issue, you have to deal with it. Of course, I'm not trying to be hippy dippy and shit like that, but there's a line. There's a line between defending yourself and defending your people and just going out for vengeance, and being brutal. And, like, I don't know, I think we're seeing a bit of that today. Again, it wasn't meant to be a commentary on today's issues, but it's certainly relevant.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels relevant. And it's cool to get that dynamic and those themes out in Shiro and in a lot of the events of the story.
Yeah.
That transpire throughout BNA.
Yeah.
So going big picture a little bit, kind of like taking the magnifying glass away and kind of going out in scale. With the overall story, we obviously have a consensus. I think most people it doesn't take a genius to realize that there's a very different sort of pacing when you get from the beginning of BNA to the end of it. The first half is very much more anthology, sort of slice of life vibe type stories where you kind of going, like you said, there's a wonderful baseball episode, and there's an episode where she gets kidnapped by kidnapped by gangsters within the city and kind of ends up teaching children how to read. And there's also incidents where she can learn to transform back into a human again, or at least in appearance, and can go back into human society with like a sort of a mermaid beast man who's like gets like an online sensation, and then it goes from like these sort of vignettes to like a very sort of like linear story.
Yeah,
with
so
a very purposeful.
So the first half, what you're
conclusion.
talking about, and people can look this up, it's called picaresque narrative. Basically, instead of having the protagonists have one goal that they're looking to progress through in each episode, instead we see them go through different episodic adventures in a consistent setting that allows us to get a better picture of the society as a whole. Honestly, the best example of this in anime is Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop does picaresque narrative probably to perfection, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's probably the champ.
But yeah, that's the first 6 episodes of this show, with some narrative aspects sprinkled in. So it's, as I said, it's condensed. There's some, Brando already mentioned a lot of what is shown. There's stuff that I was thinking about because it's in an interview. They mentioned that they had the Trigger mentioned that they had so many more ideas for episodes of this show, and that they were just kind of confined to 12. And I was thinking, like, what if we had an episode like going into like the different marketing facets of this city, because like you have different species living with each other, so you'd have to cater to like different populations when you're trying to sell your shit, and it's like, what if that was an episode, or what if so many other things that can be a neat kind of reflection on our own society, because we get little images of that in the show. The best one being the dolphin episode that you mentioned. She's like a mermaid dolphin kind of beast man.
But she's like an online influencer on like the Facebook equivalent.
Yeah, well, what's important to know is that people in Anima City are not supposed to have access to the outside world. They're not supposed to have access to Facebook or anything like that. But she gets around it through like a technology loophole, and she's able to become like an Instagram star, more or less. So because of that, she gets access to the high society of Instagram modelers' life. Like her and Michiru stop by a party that's being held by one of these models, and they accidentally reveal themselves as beastmen, and the whole party's like, oh, it's cool, man, which is exact opposite of what we thought humans are like with beastmen. But lo and behold, it turns out that they don't really care about their needs or issues or concerns. They just kind of want to accept them because it's chic and because it's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the sort of performative. Like,
I don't want to say
acceptance.
performative, because they're not doing it for like a financial gain. They have genuinely good hearts. It's just that the humans in this case are so removed from the problems that the beastmen go through that they, to pretend like they're allies is a shallow and thoughtless idea. Like, we ultimately see it conclude. The dolphin is like swimming for everybody and showing off for everybody, and she gets tired. And instead of like, maybe talking to Michiru, seeing what they need to do, they just throw her in a saltwater glass tank, not realizing that she's a mammal that needs to fucking breathe. And Michiru has to break her out, and all the humans are just so perplexed because they don't get it. They just don't get it. And like, God, that just rings so true right now. With the amount of BS going on in this fucking,
definitely very. Without going into specifics, I'm sure you all can use your own mental capacity. But yeah, there's lots of social parallels that BNA is very poignant on, which is very.
But what's nice about it is that it's never malicious, and it's never so broad that it feels like it's taking a really dumb stance on something. It just creates a scenario that you can relate to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the humans in that episode are not malicious. They're not bad people. It's just a mistake. But again, it's like the problem is that you can't rely on them in that avenue. And in the same regards, like you can almost relate it to, maybe certain celebrities saying shit that they don't really mean to back up and stuff like that.
And so with the picaresque elements of the first half, how would you describe the back half of BNA?
The back half is the traditional heroes narrative. We get a big villain plot, which is that we have a group that call themselves the Silver Fox Group. The Silver Wolf. Silver Fox is a different thing. Silver Wolf Group that use the imagery. It's like a legend. Can you kind of go over that for me? Because I'm a little fuzzy on that.
No, it gets pretty... it gets pretty hectic.
It gets pretty plotty in the second half of things.
It does. So there's a lot that's kind of brought into the forefront. So a lot of revelations happen very quickly. The first of which is that they bring in this religious group that's trying to find passage into Anima City called the Silver Wolf, like basically the Silver Wolf cult. Yes. We're going to call them. And so they serve what they believe to be, there's a prevailing, it's not an established religion per se, but it is sort of like an accepted religion of amongst the beastmen of the legend of the Silver Wolf, this guardian protector of all beastmen through the ages. And so like whenever there was trouble, the Silver Wolf will appear and basically save the day. And so this cult believes they have either found a descendant of the Silver Wolf or a incarnation of the Silver Wolf itself. It's this young girl. I don't know. I can't remember her pseudonym that she uses. Like
it's like Desiree Louvre.
Yeah, Desiree Louvre or whatever the fuck it is. But whatever that is. But her real name is Nazuna Hiwatashi. She is Michiru's best friend, and she's another human. The two of them are the only cases of humans who have turned into beastmen, and they don't know why. Well, at least not initially. And then it's revealed that the largest funders of the city, the financial backers of Anima City, so to speak, the Silvasta pharmaceutical company,
run by a human, to note.
Run by a human, named Alan. He is the one who's basically responsible for turning them into humans or into beastmen by an accidental blood pack transfusion that ended up with them.
Yeah, Michiru and Nazuna get into an accident before the events of the show. In fact, it's another sign of Michiru acting first and like pushing Nazuna out of the way of a car. Anyway, they get stuck in a hospital and they get a blood transfusion. It's really, really not important, to be quite honest.
So to not drag our feet on the whole plot explanation, basically you have this new group, which is the Silver Wolf cult, that basically follows Nazuna. Nazuna always wanted to be a pop idol, and so like this kind of fits the bill for her somehow, where it's like it is a little bit narcissistic, but at the, feeding that that necessity for attention, but also there is a little bit of nobility to it, providing hope to people in a very like earnest way, so to speak.
Yeah, the first place
And
they show up is in like the ghetto area of the city.
yeah, in the slums.
And they show up almost as moral saviors for a part of the city that's filled with debt collectors, people that are just floundering in their own debts because they're buying water filters just to get purified water and shit like that. It's very much like a savior scenario that they put themselves in.
One of Michiru's friends are like literally getting burned at the stake, and then Nazuna shows up.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then just shows up and basically quells the situation with her presence, because she's just not. Michiru and Nazuna have like, they can transform into beastmen, and they kind of have like native states, like where Michiru is a Tanuki girl usually, and Nazuna normally is a fox girl normally, but they can sort of transform into anything that they want to.
Yeah.
And Nazuna more or less turns into the visage, like the visage of like a wolf, a silver wolf, glowing with the brilliance of it. But yeah. Again, without getting too heady with it, because it's just going to get really complex, because you have this element of them trying to enter the city, and then you have the Sylvasta Corporation and their dealings with the government, and like all these things, and then you have the elements of the rage syndrome. So it's revealed that the Beastmen have this sort of element within their own DNA because of like their own mental entropy, dealing with so many other species that are within close proximity. It causes basically a rage syndrome.
Yeah, it's more or less the concept of like, the way it's proposed by Alan.
It's like going feral.
Yeah,
the
the fake science in this is that when beastmen cohabitate with other species for too long of a period of a time, their DNA becomes unstable, and as soon as they become mentally anguished or start to experience mental entropy, as you brought up earlier, that they will be enraged and become violent towards one another, and that the city will destroy itself. And like, you know what? I'm gonna save talk on the analogy of this for later, because we should probably get into what Alan's solution is for this problem.
Genocide.
Yeah. Well, it's genocide through, like, I don't even know the term. He's not planning to kill all the beastmen. He's planning to he's planning to turn them into humans. He plans on putting injecting them all with a serum that will turn them into humans, make them unable to change.
Humane ethnic cleansing.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yeah,
so that's a lot. Believe me, the parallels to World War II are not lost. In fact, one of our main characters is a survivor of World War II. And it's like
Alan is blonde-haired and blue-eyed.
Oh
looks
my
like
god!
A young,
so this is where stuff starts hitting the nail with the hammer, and like, you can It depends on how well it resonates with you, to be quite honest. How willing you are to believe in what the hell is going on. So to some, myself included, at the moment, I'm rolling my fucking eyes. I don't know about you, Brando.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, look, Trigger has had series and moments that where when they're trying to basically apex, when they're finishing the series and they're reaching the climax and they're trying to perpetuate the main concept, theme, message of the series, of the overall story that they're trying to tell. Mm-hmm. There's not much middle ground as far as the hit or miss situation.
Yeah, there's not much subtlety in their writing.
Yeah. So it either culminates in a sort of in a very meaningful way, like in Gurren, like in Kill la Kill, and to a much poorer degree, Darling in the Franxx. This is on the lesser side of those things because, like,
I thought that initially. Yeah. I thought that initially.
I'm not saying it's not a bad series because of it.
Yeah,
it is just a muddled message. The delivery of it is a little bit off.
Well, and so
it can be read too many different ways, which is a good and bad thing. But go ahead.
So let's. I'm just gonna end our discussion of the plot. Our review of the plot by saying Alan's plan is revealed. It's also revealed that Alan is a beastman himself, but a pure beastman who has never commingled with other beastmen, and thus his bloodline is pure, and he believes that that the races should be separate. And so
Go on.
So Alan and I'm sorry, I'm getting the names all here. Alan and Ogami have a final fight where they show their true forms off. They can both turn into giant wolf-like monsters, Alan being a 3-headed version for some reason. I think that has to do with royalty. I think that's a homage to the concept of a tyrannical ruler in Asian mythology, but I could be wrong. I don't know the exact reference.
You had mentioned that it kind of reminded you of like Godzilla versus King Ghidorah a little bit.
Yeah.
Like this sort of scrappy protector versus like this king of monsters situation.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, I think that's what they're going for with that imagery. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Anyway, the point being, Ogami wins. It turns out that all of the... Oh, shit, I skipped over the fact that Alan is using the church to create hope, just to crush it in front of the entire public. And that kind of works for a little bit until they find out that there is a cure for this rage syndrome, and that is apparently Michiru's blood.
Yep.
Which I don't get. That's the one part I have not been able to put my head around. I don't know if
you're trying to add.
Yeah, I really don't know.
That is, yeah, I think it's her and Nazuna, but
yeah, it's basically the tainted beastman blood sort of thing.
Yeah, the human beastman.
Yeah.
So like Alan has this whole fucking complex about how, or like the scientific explanation of the rage syndrome, where
he describes he describes the cause as the commingling of beastmen, but it turns out that he almost develops it just before he's defeated anyway. So it's just an issue that's going on, but he's so obsessed with the idea of like pure-blooded and like, again, separation of the races that it allows that it dilutes his perception of things and makes him think that the only way forward is with this like genocide. I'll be real, that is unfortunately relatable in this world. That is terribly and unfortunately relatable in this world. Not of course not to what we think, but to what we see others preach. And it's terrible. And it makes for a fucking good villain, I'll tell you that. But it's unfortunate that it's all kind of revealed within the last 40 minutes of the series. It's kind of revealed and concluded very quickly. So there's no really like big surprise and satisfying defeat moment. It's just like I'm basically Hitler, and then we shoot Hitler in the face. It's like, it's very not satisfying. But it still works in terms of the message that they're going for, I think. And in fact, there is a cut me off if I'm going too far, but I think there's something interesting to be said about setting up a show where the main character is more or less the entire city. It's Anima City. And you spend the first half of it describing the social issues that are currently plaguing the system, currently plaguing the city. And then the second half of it is the drama caused by one individual's ideological almost crusade against a problem that is only really created by their own interference. You know what I mean? Like the rage syndrome would not have been a problem if Alan had not been interfering with everything going on in Anima City. And in fact, if he and Mayor Rose and Ogami had been putting more of their efforts towards fixing these social problems with poverty, with class, with just almost law, the lack of law throughout the city, then they could avoid the rage syndrome.
There is a law. It's the law of the jungle.
Yeah, that's not a law, but that's the thing. Like, it's put out there in the beginning that, if you have a beef with somebody, you can just beat the shit out of them. You can even kill them and just get away with it. And that's not good for a city that's full of people.
Nah, bro.
No, it's really
animals are different.
no,
They
but they're
abide
not.
by
That's the
different
point.
rules.
That's the point. Is that they say that Alan thinks they're different. That Alan
You
thinks
know,
he's special for being the purebred. But
this
really,
is
for
interesting,
them to
actually.
coexist, they have to apply by the similar social structures that we have ourselves.
This reminds me of the one episode, which is actually, I think, a little bit more interesting now that I think about it in this moment, in retrospect, which is the episode with Pingua, the Birdman,
Yes.
and how he talks about how his people, the Birdmen, still adhere to basically the migratory patterns that are in his DNA. You know, the necessity to travel south, and around the world, and climatory travel for birds.
Yeah.
How this is built into their DNA, and they travel, and because beastmen have human rights, it's not all good things. You know, they obviously are afforded the protections of human autonomy, but that at the same time, they can't just travel at will. You know,
No.
to go through multiple countries, you need a passport. You need like all the paperwork and like all this other stuff, and if not, you are basically invading countries. You are basically illegally immigrating, and a lot of his friends get killed because of that.
Yeah.
And it's that idea that we of beastmen adhering to human norms being a double-edged sword and a very complex issue, and it's only really explored in this one episode. But as we talk about the finale and how like
No. Can we go back to that, because I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
If anything, that again, it's one of these things where it's like, it's not bad that that human society wants to incorporate beastmen into their own. The problem is that they're not incorporating them. They're just forcing their own laws onto the beastmen, and those laws do not like provide them the means to which. I'm sorry. Basically, the laws are not being restructured around the beastmen. The beastmen are being forced to abide by the human laws.
Yeah, they don't adhere to the nuance.
They don't have a
beastmen.
voice, and
Yeah.
they don't have a say in what they can do. And so you end up having these rebellious groups that just say, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want anyway." And they become outlaws, not because they're hurting people, not because they're hurting the society, but just because they're not adhering to what the system says they need to do. You know?
So it's a sensitive subject, but it's very interesting. Yeah, like with how it is addressed in some capacity.
Yeah.
And it does link slightly to the finale of the show, as far as like the overall conflict between Alan and Shiro and the ideologies they represent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Shiro. I'm sorry, I'm going to be jumping onto that. So, did you have something to say about the finale?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a different idea. Jumping to Shiro and like the end of his arc, more or less, is that at the end, it turns out that Alan and Shiro have a past. Both of them are over 1,000 years old, and that apparently Shiro was created because of a massacre on the Anima city that existed 1,000 years ago, in like prehistoric times, I guess. I don't fucking know, but and that Alan was he was doing more or less the same thing. He was tricking humans into attacking the Anima city of that time called Nervasil, I believe. He tricked them like into going to war with that city, and got away with it. Was able to massacre an entire village, and it was through their sacrifice that Ogami became the immortal Silver Wolf. It's a really superhero-esque storyline. Point being that Ogami gets a chance to kill Alan at the end. He gets an opportunity to, and he would be. I think a lot of people, kind of myself included, would think he would be more than in his rights to deliver the final blow, but instead realizes that, you know, Michiru's way is the right way, that just maiming people, that tearing their identity away from them is not the way to progress. It is, you know, that using your own powers that are given to you for the sake of justice, and using and abusing them for your own emotional needs is just not the right path, and so he
Mm-hmm.
like Muhammad Ali did to I forgot the boxer's name, but he lets him go. He just says, "You're not worth it." Unfortunately, we don't really get to see a resolution to that either, because Alan disappears from the plot after that. But again, that's what happens when your plot's fucking. That's what happens when.
Well, I mean, at the end,
your
there's like a
plot's
little coda
condensed.
on it. There, like a little, like like a little after news broadcast. Like Alan is like removed as CEO from the Sylvester Corporation, and then the Japanese Prime Minister, who is like who is an accessory to all of this, is also removed from office.
Right, but
so
but I
like
mean,
some
we don't get
supposed-
to see if how his character reacts to that. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, no, yeah, he just gets the shit.
And that
beat
would
out of
be
him.
important. That would be really important. But again, it's being condensed. Can't really help it.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. But
Yeah, so that's pretty much everything I got out of this show.
yeah, no, plot wise and story wise and character wise, there's a lot there to be had, and a lot that we can go into the nitty gritty of it, like the small details. But there's not too much else that I don't want to microscope it. Obviously, I still want you guys to go ahead and give it a chance and take a listen.
Oh yeah,
give it a
Jesus!
watch.
I hope you've seen it if you've gotten this far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the music is fantastic. Like you said, the ending, nice, clean. Night Running, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The soundtrack, I think, is done by Mabunawa. I can't remember his name, but did Megalobox, did Kids on the Slope, has done a lot of good music over the years. And the visuals, Trigger standard, which is a good standard to be held to. It's a very solid animation. Like I said, there are some moments where the budget definitely kicks in, but I think Trigger is a studio that is creative in sort of integrating the budget cuttiness into humor.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of moments that reused frames are used for comical effect, and that's great. Thankfully, they know how to stretch a buck, so good on them.
Yeah, so overall, the production side is fairly solid. It's pretty concise, and I mean, the ending does leave room for continuation. I don't think that they would. I personally don't. It would have to be an interesting script.
If anything, there would be like
on.
a side novella or something where they show more sides to the city and stuff like that. But I doubt they would put any production value into it.
Yeah.
The big problem with these picaresque narratives is that it's really hard to get modern audiences to stay engaged with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be real.
It's probably why they don't fully commit to it. Yeah. There is definitely that side of it for the first half, and then they kind of bail out, and they're like, all right, we need this to kind of end somewhere for people to feel some sort of, I guess,
satisfaction.
Some satisfaction, some euphoric ending, some sort of, I don't know, catharsis with regards to this experience. So
yeah,
we're gonna go for it right at the end because we're Trigger.
But yeah, I mean, I still think the show's good. It is shockingly relevant, or maybe I'm just looking too much into it, but it is shockingly relevant for our current times.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot to be validated with regards to like the social issues that you might see in BNA and in today's society, as it has been for some time. But yeah, and then maybe not ringing as loud as it has been previously, but yeah, BNA, good series. Definitely think that a lot of you should give it a look-see, just for, if not for all of the the high-minded themes, for at least the
you know what, it's good. It's good and entertaining on its own, and that's what's really important. Like, I'm not a fan of shows and pieces of work that are just all message and no entertaining value. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no fun.
Michiru's a fantastic character. Ogami is as well. Even Nazuna. I really kind of got into their relationship, her and Michiru. Because Nazuna becomes this really like real bitch of a character, because she just she's so selfish, and she's so wrapped up in this false narrative that she's being played into, that she ultimately kind of betrays Michiru, not in a immediate sense, but in a bit of an immediate sense, but also just in an emotional way without even realizing it. And that moment's really powerful. There's a moment where they're in the same car together and driving and being driven down the city streets, and it's a pretty standard shot, but like there's that shot of, you know, the empty seat between them and them both looking out the side mirrors, and it's really gorgeous, and it really works to portray the emotions that are going on in the scene. And like, I don't know, it's just great to see a animation studio that can still use visuals as well as, you know, sound and script writing to tell a entertaining and meaningful story in this age of like kind of self-glorifying shows that we kind of watch all the fucking time.
Yeah, that we wade through.
Yeah.
Like the sludge in the swamp. But yeah, no, Trigger's always got refreshing character dynamics, and Michiru and Nazuna's relationship is fun. Like that scene in particular, you describe it and it rings to my head very clearly when they're looking at each other. Well, not looking at it, they're looking away from each other, but they're more or less, it kind of is belayed that they're looking at each other's backs and their reflections in a way.
Yeah. Well, they're looking to their past. They're looking to the person that they thought was there. Yeah. You know, it's a really, really poignant moment. I don't know. I've been fortunate enough to never have had somebody betray me in a significant manner, but like, I don't know. I could at least sympathize with it, and that's all art's. That's all art's supposed to do.
Yeah. Make you feel.
Make you feel.
Make you feel. Well, I think that's more or less everything that we had to discuss about BNA. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation we had today. If you echo any of our thoughts, if you want to say how your BNA experience was, shout it down below in the comments. If you feel like it, hit that like button, subscribe. Always appreciate the love and support. And if you guys want to get more content, that's the way to do so. And we got the Twitters, the IGs, they'll all be linked below.
We do. Yep, we got. Go to Twitter for @the Otaku Remix on Twitter. You can follow us there, and you know, tell us what you'd like to see us do a review on or talk about. It could be anime, could be other shit as well. And then if you want to follow us individually, Brando doesn't have a Twitter because he's a tool, and nope. I have a Twitter @Houseman2593. You can find me there. I'm usually doing stuff for the FGC and stuff like that. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any of this.
But yeah, that's all we got for today. So as always, guys, stay safe, have a good day, have a good life, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.